Much like comedy, tragedy is not easy to write. You can't have nothing but downer moments, or the audience will be too bummed out to care, but you will also still have to have enough. There's a balance. You have to give the audience a reason to care. You have to make sure that the tragedies of individual characters aren't fighting for attention. Maybe try linking them together, having their tragedies overlap, or make sure that you don't have too much going on all at once. Logan is an excellent example of how to write tragedy, character tragedy, and here's why.
I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. It must be exhausting, always rooting for the anti-hero.
Assuming X-Men Origins Wolverine is canon in this timeline, or at least some version of those events, James Howlett was born in Canada in 1832. Logan takes place in 2029, which puts him at the ripe old age of 197. This is not the Wolverine you knew from those first few X-Men movies. This man's life is pain.
Life is pain, Highness. Anyone who says differently is selling something.
His healing factor is not working properly, and I don't just mean it's slowing down. I mean, instead of just healing his injuries the way it normally did, it's healing them with scar tissue. Now, on the literal surface, that wouldn't be too bad, because that's how people are. If a certain injury is bad enough, it leaves a scar. But imagine if he got shot through the heart, or the lungs.
You know, this is the least. No one's gonna pay to ride.
Imagine having scar tissue on your lungs. No wonder he's coughing so much. Survivor's guilt is nothing new to superhero media, but Logan does it better than most. Logan has had to watch everyone he loves die with one exception: Charles. Charles is one of the two things in the world Logan still cares about. The other is Caliban. Yes, Logan is still gruff to Caliban, unlike with Charles, but there is a part of him that still cares about his well-being. When he's telling Laura that he is bad for her, he's bad news because everybody he cares about dies, he specifically mentions that
Charles never asked for this, Caliban never asked for this, and they are 6 feet under the ground.
early on, Charles assesses that Logan is waiting for him to die, and he's right.
You're waiting for me to die.
Logan is keeping himself alive just long enough to take care of Charles until he dies. To his credit, he does technically succeed in that regard, but he doesn't last much longer himself. James Howlett dies an undoubtedly painful death and is buried in an unmarked grave.
In the heat of battle, my father wove a tapestry of obscenity that, as far as we know, is still hanging in space over Lake Michigan.
Much like Logan, Charles Xavier is a shadow of his former self. This is not the Professor X who helped Magneto lift a goddamn submarine out of the ocean.
Remember, the point between rage and serenity.
This is an old man who no longer has complete control over his mental faculties and, by extension, his powers. He is ailed, not by a fictional disease like mutant flu or blue shadow virus, but by Alzheimer's.
A degenerative brain disease in the world's most dangerous brain.
He is unaware that he, Logan, and Caliban are in hiding because he lost control, presumably while having a seizure, and killed the other X-Men. Charles's world is one of confusion and pain with only brief, commercial-like moments of clarity. I can't even imagine what living like that is like, but it clearly sucks. He lives in what I'm pretty sure is a collapsed water tower, and it seems like he spends most of his time alone. His keen intellect is still there, and sometimes it shines through.
You're waiting for me to die.
But most of the time, it's trapped behind a fog of a degenerative brain disease. There is exactly one moment in this movie where it's actually confirmed that he consciously and deliberately uses his powers, and that's when he helps guide the horses to safety.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
every other time he used them, people get hurt. And his biggest moment of clarity, when he finally realizes that he's the reason they're on the run, happens shortly before his death. Professor Charles Xavier dies an undoubtedly painful death and is buried in an unmarked grave. This brings us to the first words of our third and final protagonist.
I would like to see the baby.
Laura Kinney was created for the TV show X-Men Evolution back in 2003, and she later got her own run of comics, including an origin story. However, for those of us who only watched the movies, this was our introduction to her. I have read a few of her comics since then, and I absolutely adore her. This borderline feral child is the result of a super soldier program gone horribly right. She is the only one of the kids who actually wants to fight, but she absolutely hates the people she was created to fight for. She was born in a lab with no biological parents. She did not have that kindness, that nurturing, not to the extent that she needed it. Is it any wonder that she turned out the way she did? Laura does not take kindly to Logan, and I don't blame her. He's gruff and dismissive and initially tries to leave her behind. I fully believe that Gabriella probably told Laura that Logan is her father, so I can only imagine Laura's disappointment. After Gabriella is killed, Charles is the only person who cares about Laura, and it's only after his death that she finally speaks. And by speaks, I mean chews Logan's ass out for how he's been treating her, which is exactly why she hasn't been talking up until that point.
Well, why the fuck? What's all this bullshit been for the last 2,000 fucking miles? What? Okay, shut up. Shut the fuck up!
Fun fact, in an unused take of that scene, her rant had a bit more swearing, and according to Hugh Jackman, after about 40 minutes or so, he went up to Daphne Keene's mother and said, "Maria, I've got an 11-year-old at home, and I'm just really sorry." Maria said, "Oh, don't worry, she just called you a cunt in Spanish." She really was perfect for the role. Despite this, Laura tries to bond with Logan. She clearly cares about him, at least to some extent, or at the very least, she respects Charles's request not to let Logan die. When she finally gets him to open up, he treats her not as a child, but as an equal. Straight up admitting that he keeps an adamantium bullet around because sometimes he thinks about shooting himself.
Pesadilla. You had a nightmare.
You have nightmares.
See. People hurt me.
Mine are different.
¿Por qué?
I hurt people.
¿Qué es esto?
You know what it is. It's made out of adamantium. That's what they put inside of us. That's why it can kill us. Probably what's killing me now. Anyway, I got this a long time ago, and I kept it as a reminder of what I am. Now I keep it to, Actually, I was thinking of shooting myself with it. Like Charles said.
I've hurt people too.
You're gonna have to learn how to live with that.
They were bad people.
All the same.
Later, when he knows he's going to part ways with her, he wants to make it easier for her, so he puts the walls back up.
And it is better this way. Because I suck at this. Bad shit happens to people I care about. You understand me?
And her response is ice cold.
Then I'll be fine.
Laura and her friends are hunted through the woods by their former captors. Just as all hope seems lost, she sees her father come charging in like an animal, ripping soldiers limb from limb. But alas, the green juice wears off and suddenly Logan is weaker than ever.
You took all the medicine. It's wearing off.
When X-24 comes out, Logan does his best, but he's clearly outmatched. All he can do is serve as a distraction, keeping his feral clone focused on him instead of the kids. Laura is forced to watch as the father she only recently discovered is dragged across the grass and impaled on a tree stump. She shoots and presumably kills X-24, but it's too late. The damage is done. Laura watches her father die, his healing factor finally failing him. Now, because this version of Laura is so young, they cut out the prostitution part of her origin, but she still gets put through the ringer. In the span of a week or two, she loses the only parental figure in her life, gains 2 more, and proceeds to lose them as well. The only silver lining is that she's finally reunited with her friends and they've made it to Canada.
Do you long for having your heart interlinked? Interlinked.
Interlinked.
Do you dream about being interlinked?
Interlinked.
Think back to everything I've talked about so far. Think back to how many times I was talking about one member of the trio and mentioned one or both of the others. Logan, Charles, and Laura's trauma and tragedies are all connected, and those connections are part of why their individual tragedies work so well. Logan has cut himself off from the rest of the world because it's not safe for Charles to be in populated areas. His found family is dead because Charles lost control of his powers. Charles's life is one of pain and confusion. Because he doesn't know why they're in hiding, he sometimes thinks that Logan is the one who did something horrible.
I gave you a family.
They're gone now.
Logan. Logan. What did you do? What did you do? Answer me!
He and Logan both die as an indirect result of letting Laura into their lives. She undeniably made their lives better while she was there, but still. Laura was born without loving parents because she was made from a sample taken from Logan during his fucked up super soldier past. The only mother she ever had dies shortly after they make contact with Logan, which may or may not have been a coincidence, but still. She found her friends and made it to Canada, but now she has to live with the trauma of burying her father. The point I'm trying to make here is that this is how you write tragedy. This is how you sprinkle in just enough hope to keep the audience invested and to make it from being a total downer. The fact that we already knew Charles and Logan from the previous X-Men movies certainly helps get some of us invested, but it still works even if this is your first X-Men movie. These people live shitty lives, taking every scrap of happiness they can get because they don't know how long they have. That's why the stop at the Munson's house works so well. Ill-advised it may be, but it gives the trio one happy moment together before things go sideways even more than they already were. Charles Xavier dies an undoubtedly painful death and is buried in an unmarked grave. James Howlett dies on his back with blood everywhere, holding his heart in his hand, and is buried in an unmarked grave. Laura Kinney is left an orphan, reunited with her friends but robbed of the father she only recently met. But make no mistake, this is a bittersweet ending, not a downer. Laura and the other kids make it to Canada alive and mostly unharmed, and Charles and Logan are finally at peace.
Oh, so this is what it feels like.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and all that. If you don't like the video, tell me why, try to be constructive, and then subscribe anyway. When I upload a new video, you'll get that notification. Watch that video and tell me why that one sucks, or maybe where I've improved. That's all for now. Stay safe in these crazy times.